On page 98, exercise 27, this is quite an interesting dysrhythmia. And I like it because it's ugly as sin. So, at first glance, you look at this and you think, what the f is that thing? It's just butt ugly. And quite frankly, if you turn up the ECG size, it gets even uglier still. Now, the alternative would be to look at some other ECG or some other leads, right? Here we're in lead 2. You might try looking at lead 1 or lead 3 or maybe some of the V leads to see if you can get a different morphology, something that's easier to read. Well, let's start with the heart rate though. So the heart rate's approximately 130, and again, we can measure this out. We'll assume that this is the QRS here, and it's 300, 150, 100, 110, 20, 30. So that's 130. P waves are present and upright, and I'll just tell you that the P waves are here, if you were wondering about that. And the PR interval is about 0.16 second, and it's consistent. The QRS is 0.12, so I'm going to tell you that the QRS starts here and ends about there. And it's 0.12 seconds, so it's wide, so there's aberrancy there, no question about that. The ratio of P waves to QRS is 1:1. The rhythm is regular, and this might come as a shock, but the interpretation is simply a sinus tachycardia with a heart rate of approximately 130 with aberrant conduction, right? Sounds pretty simple. Now, when you see something this ugly, again, what I recommend is look at other leads. This is not a lead 2 interpretation course. This is a dysrhythmia interpretation course. And it's so easy to get into the routine of always looking at lead 2. And, I have students and colleagues of mine who come to me and say, Rob, what is this rhythm? And I look at it and I think, I don't know. Have you got it in another ECG lead? Because I can't interpret it in this lead, and that's my advice: is look at other leads. We get fixated with lead 2. We need to look at some other leads. But let's just look at this one, and I've enlarged it a little bit on this next slide. I'm sorry, it's a little bit blurry, but we can look into detail. Now, keep in mind that here's some basic principles. QRSs are jagged, right? They have jagged edges. Jagged. I'm hoping I'm spelling this right. Jagged. Oopsie. Sorry for the line there. P waves tend to be smooth and rounded, as are T waves. So that's my terrible drawing there. Let me get rid of that. So assuming the QRSs are jagged, I'm going to make an assumption, take a leap of faith here, and assume that this jagged stuff here is the QRS. And if that's the QRS, then I would expect to find a P wave before it, and I do. And I would expect to find a T wave after it, and I do. And so now we know that consistently here's a P wave, here's a QRS, and here is the T wave. P wave, QRS, sorry, this part here, from there to there, and that's a T wave there. So that's an easy way to look at it. Just, try to isolate the jagged parts here, the QRS, and then look at the P wave before and the T wave afterwards. And you notice that the T wave barely sort of makes its way down before the P wave begins there again. So that's the easier way to make this rhythm interpretation. And as I said, if you tried to turn the ECG size up on this, it would just look even uglier. So look at it in different leads. Now, when you see tiny complexes like this, most commonly we see tiny QRS complexes and everything else in patients with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, because you don't get the kind of electrical current, same kind of electrical current going through diseased lungs. So you might have tiny complexes in all the leads, but check the other leads to see if the complexes are a little bit clearer.